Okay, well, I'll just make a start. If everyone's okay. So my name's Annette Hay. I'll try to keep the mic close to my mouth because I've recognised that today that, sometimes it's been a bit of a challenge. Just two things, first of all. Just to say, firstly, that I am going to be reading from notes. I'm not saying this from a place of apology or weakness. It's just that I feel more confident reading from notes. I don't like doing presentations. I don't mind the discussion. And, we've talked about people being neurodiverse. And for me, it's one of the things I don't like. I'm very confident. That's why I'm sharing it with you. It's not a problem, but I'm just letting you know. The second thing is, I've recently had a serious eye injury to one eye. So that affects a little bit of my vision reading, but also looking at you all. So I apologise if that causes any kind of confusion or anything, but yeah, just bear with me. Okay, so I'll start if you're okay. Okay, my name's Annette Hay, and for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to be working at Coventry University. However, as of the 1st of August, I'm going to be joining De Montfort University as the head of Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, and De Montfort University is in Leicester. The only reason I'm sharing that with you now is because obviously I've been introduced on my bio as coming from Coventry University, but also if anybody wants to contact me afterwards, I suggest you go via LinkedIn. I think my LinkedIn address is on there. So my presentation is going to be about 20 minutes long, but I'd like to use the remaining time for us to have a discussion and questions and answers. Sure, if you've got questions you want to ask me, but I'd like us to have a discussion amongst ourselves. So if people have got want to respond to questions that come up, then please do, and that includes people online. I'm going to be talking about the role of mentoring and sponsorship for early career researchers from Black and global majority backgrounds. Now, that's the terminology I like to use. Sometimes I refer to people from Black and minority ethnic, but I prefer to use Black and global majority backgrounds. And I'm going to be talking about any anticipated barriers, challenges, and opportunities. And perhaps at the end, if you want to share your thoughts on what I've said, but also it'd be great to hear some of your experiences in terms of any good or not so good practice. So I'm going to talk briefly about the role that I believe mentoring and sponsorship has in identifying and leveraging opportunities for Black and global majority early career researchers, in particular for empowering individuals through creating and establishing relationships and networks that will not only help more early career researchers from the Black and global majority stay in academia, but actually survive academia with their mental health, well-being, and reputation intact, if you get what I mean. I mean, this has been talked about, it's come up quite several times already today, so I apologise again if I repeat anything anybody said, but this is what my session's about. So first, I'll just give you a very quick overview about me, an insight into where I come from, what I'm doing, and why I'm here. So where am I coming from? Well, I'm born and raised in Coventry to Jamaican parents. My father was a determined and sometimes very defiant Black activist who raised us in a very white middle-class neighbourhood. And I don't know whether that was a deliberate thing that he did. He had a very strange sense of humour, but he was you can imagine, he was very well known in our city. He still is. My family is very well known, but we grew up amongst in a very white neighbourhood. I don't get it, but anyway. And although my father never really lectured to us about racism and racial inequalities, we lived and breathed it every day because he did. So I would describe myself as a lived experienced academic, a LEA. Now, I don't know if even that terminology exists, if it means anything to anybody. I doubt it. But I'm putting it out there because that's how I feel. I feel like my lived experiences are equal to, if not actually more than, my academic ones. And this term feels more descriptive and inclusive of who and what I am. Okay. So what am I doing here? Well, I found myself spending most of my career fighting for equality, civil rights and social justice, which has had a significant impact on my personal experiences in and outside of academia. I came into academia late in life after having children, quite young, and spending several years volunteering in a Black women's organisation called Asaba Women's Centre in Coventry. And that's where I was first exposed to my positive and progressive mentoring and sponsoring experiences. These experiences were often for short periods of time, but what I would say is that in that time, you know, it was time that was very well spent, and it has served me well throughout my career and my life. And it has definitively and positively been influential in helping me navigate very complex and challenging experiences of structural and systemic racism over the years. So representation matters, and I want to positively represent the Black and global majority whenever, wherever, and however I can, using my knowledge and experiences as a lived experience academic. And finally, why am I here? Well, simply put, I'm here because I truly appreciate, you know, how difficult it is for early career researchers from Black and global majority backgrounds to get the outcomes and the opportunities that they deserve. And that they're often very underrated and understated in the sector. So I want to use my learning and lived experiences of academia to pay it forward by promoting and influencing the power and importance of mentoring and sponsorship when done correctly and with the right people. It can actually be quite life-changing. Again, some people have talked about that earlier. So once I started working in academia, I found myself on the other side of mentoring and sponsorship, that is, actively and purposely mentoring and sponsoring colleagues, students, and academics from the Black and global majority in particular. Because I've seen how systemic racial inequalities and discrimination are not only holding Black and global majority early career researchers back, but in many instances, it's actually pushing them out of the academic space altogether. And when I look at where we are now in terms of the education and research outcomes for people from Black and the global majority backgrounds, it feels like we're going back to the future in some ways. My dad, you know, passed away a couple of years ago, and again, he was a Black activist. And when I used to talk to him about the experiences I was having and my colleagues were having in academia, in higher education, he couldn't believe it. He just couldn't believe that we were still having those same discussions and challenges. So how is it that we are still here, still underrepresented in research funding outcomes? Why are we still exploring reasons for these pernicious rewarding gaps? And why do we feel more frustrated now than ever before within the sector? So as we look to the future and where we want to be, we must also look back at where we've come from. Okay. At where we've come from. Sorry. And again, I think Brightness was talking about that earlier, and how much has really changed. Okay, I can see so much. Shall I press onto that? I don't know if something's come up on the screen. Okay. Oh, that's okay. Okay, and this is something hopefully we might be able to discuss at the end in terms of how much progress have we really made. Having said that, I recognise too that for Black and global majority early career researchers, there are often very complex, nuanced, and perplexing situations which arise from the systemic, structural, and individual acts of racism that they experience throughout their early careers in research, and which over time can negatively and unfairly impact their research goals, working relationships, career prospects, and just their general well-being. So I'm just going to give you a couple of definitions first. Although it might seem obvious to some, the definitions of mentoring and sponsorship are quite distinct and different, but they can be conflated often or misunderstood. And this can result in unmet or unrealistic expectations of mentees and sponsees in particular, if not managed accordingly. So I'll just briefly share the definitions that I use. So for the purpose of the workshop we're doing today, the definition that I like to use for mentoring is one from David Clutterbuck, who says that mentoring involves primarily listening and empathy, sharing experience, usually mutually, professional friendship, developing insight through reflection, being a sounding board, and encouraging. So from this statement, you can see that mentoring is being described as a reciprocal activity between two people whereby the mentor's ability to actively listen with empathy is an essential characteristic. And the ability to establish and maintain a rapport, I would say, is especially important in the context of supporting early career researchers from Black and global majority backgrounds, in order to establish truly meaningful relationships, mutual exchanges and understanding of how they are experiencing academia and the institution as researchers. And whilst the mentor should be friendly with the mentee and vice versa, the mentor needs to maintain a certain level of professionalism in order to be able to provide objective and constructive advice, direction and guidance, as well as being able to help them constructively and productively navigate emotionally sensitive issues, decision-making and areas of conflict, particularly in relation to or in the context of some of their personal characteristics, such as ethnicity and colour. Okay, so now for the definition of sponsorship that I like to use. So according to the Chartered Management Institute, choosing to sponsor someone means becoming their advocate, both in public and behind closed doors. This could be anything from championing an individual for promotion to getting them on the books for a conference or presentations. So as in mentoring, there is likely to be elements of mutual engagement and discourse. However, the sponsor will have actively made a decision to choose to work with a particular individual. So it's not a relationship based on matching as such, but based on the sponsor's own knowledge, experience and perceptions of that individual's career potential. And maybe even more cynically, they may have their own business objectives and personal reasons to want to invest their time and effort in a particular individual. It's usually not a one-way thing, nor should it be, but sponsorship is often presented in this way. And unlike mentoring, in order to benefit from and achieve their desired impact and preferred outcome, sponsorship does not always require the sponsee to be physically present or actively participating in regular or regulated conversations, such as you would when mentoring. However, I would urge just a little caution in this regard, because whilst most sponsors will genuinely have your support and career and personal development needs at the forefront, this can sometimes become contested for people from Black and global majority backgrounds, especially as the sponsor is more likely to come from a white or non-Black and global majority background. So there is greater potential for things to be misrepresented, misunderstood, or just go off course if the sponsee does not feel able or empowered to freely participate and engage in the direction things are going. Again, this is something we can discuss afterwards if people have, opinions one way or the other on this. So what are some of the specific benefits of mentoring and sponsorship for early career researchers from Black and global majority backgrounds? So in terms of mentoring, there is no precise and exact prescription for who and how you match up mentors and mentees. However, when it comes to mentoring in particular, it can often be more beneficial if your mentor has a shared or similar lived and or research experience to the mentee. And with the people from Black and global majority backgrounds, these can be defining and essential characteristics for the most optimal matching. This would enable more positive racial and cultural reinforcements, role modeling, and where the mentor is able to provide more equitable and empathetic feedback, sharing of knowledge and learning, and where they can give genuinely non-judgmental advice. And it's an opportunity to see the potential in the mentee and to direct them to resources and networks that are actually relevant to not just their career and their research, but also in terms of their cultural and social needs. The mentee should feel confident that their relationship with their mentor is a safe one, and that any communications and meetings that take place are in emotionally and physically safe spaces and places, whereby both parties feel able to speak freely, openly, honestly, and most importantly, confidentially, without fear of disclosure, humiliation, judgment, or repercussions. When mentoring works, it works well, and it can help improve a mentee's personal outlook confidence, self-reflection, and growth. And as previously mentioned, it can increase their productivity, attainment, and outcomes because they are more likely to remain motivated, inspired, and hopeful. Again, these are some of the things that I've been hearing people mention, throughout the day. Mentoring can help build or reinforce resilience, fortitude, and character in a mentee, so that the mentee becomes more robust and steadfast when faced with dilemmas and conflictual situations as they embark on their early research career. Over time, a positive mentoring experience can engender more insightful decision-making for the mentee and empower them to be their authentic selves. A mentor should be able to help guide their mentee into making good, appropriate, and timely decisions or actions in order to help develop their resilience and confidence, so that they may rise undeterred from their low points, but also own and unashamedly celebrate their highs. Again, something that's been talked about a lot about imposter syndrome. Sponsors, on the other hand, can significantly widen and increase your networks, connections, and career opportunities, and can introduce you to very influential people and networks, sometimes highly recommending you to people who are very influential and well-placed for you to know and engage with for your research. Sponsors can open doors that are often closed to some, and certainly is the experience of many early career researchers from Black and global majority backgrounds, a bit like the picture on this slide. This is the sort of door many Black and global majority early career researchers are facing throughout their careers. Doors with multiple locks, with numerous combinations and hidden codes, a metaphor that is so familiar to many, I'm sure. So we sometimes need interventions or superseders to assist with code breaking as opposed to code switching. And sponsors can create such opportunities that would not normally or readily come your way. They can facilitate and stimulate higher visibility for you as an individual and or your research, promoting your personal attributes, skills, and potential, but also your actual research subjects, projects, ambitions, and just generally raising your profile. A sponsor will actively go out of their way to champion you and your work with the sole intention of not only positively influencing you, some of your choices and your actions, but also with the view to positively influence others in your favor. This can and often does take place in on and off the record conversations and communications, in meeting rooms and social spaces where you may not even be present, but where you become a positive focus of conversations that can take place in senior and influential networks and spaces. A sponsor will earnestly and passionately encourage you to step up to perhaps previously unforeseen opportunities, and then sometimes step outside of your normal comfort zones into unfamiliar territory, but with their backing, support, and endorsements where needed. They will enable you to further amplify your voice and research with a view towards assisting you in any way that they can to achieve your best potential. And most noticeably, a sponsor can elevate and escalate your career prospects, your profile, and your reputation as a researcher, drawing attention to your best attributes, skills, traits, and aspirations and potential. However, the sponsee is not just a receiver. The sponsee can also give, and they should be a constant and active participant in their own destiny, choices, and outcomes. So why are mentors and sponsors important? Well, mentoring and sponsorship are important because they provide opportunities for early career researchers to engage with and learn from positive role models. They can provide genuinely safe spaces. They can stimulate a greater sense of belonging. They can be empowering and validating, especially if done sensitively and with the right support. When you believe someone else believes in you and you are being listened to, when you feel your hard work and efforts are noticed and acknowledged, that alone can help propel and inspire you to exceed yourself or certainly others' expectations of you. And last but not least, mentoring and sponsorship can be good for enabling good mental health and well-being, just because representation really does matter for early career researchers from Black and global majority backgrounds. Now, I could have said a lot more, and I've got some examples and things that, I'm quite happy to share with you without my screen. And I've got some, some suggested areas for discussion here, but I'm quite happy to respond to questions, but also I'd like everybody to share their experiences and their thoughts on what I've said and anything that I haven't said too. So thank you. Anybody? I'm going to just, I think I'm facilitating my own conversation. So does anybody have any comments or around mentoring or sponsor? Okay, so I think you need a round of applause afterwards as well, actually, because yeah, because I've been saying you've been doing a lot of help. Yeah.
1, 2.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm also Annette.
Oh, you.
Hello. Don't meet many Annettes. I am currently about to restart my PhD. It's a very long story if anyone wants to ask me. I'm in the arts, in dance specifically. I got caught in the collateral damage of cuts at a university. And I've got a couple of things I wanted to thank you very much for your presentation on mentoring, because we did have a discussion earlier about having different types of mentors or mentors in different places. I'm just thinking about navigating when you're choosing a mentor, because originally when I had started on the first program, the deal was that they were going to assign me a mentor, specifically a Black academic mentor, which I'm not sure actually existed in the area of what I was requiring. But also within those kind of, that situation, how I'd navigate if it doesn't work. If if someone else is assigning you a mentor, how do you go about having those conversations as in, well, this isn't working out for me. The second thing I wanted to just comment on is you asked the question, how much progress has been made? And I just wanted to comment that a lot of my research is looking at history in Britain, in the Black community of the 20th century. And what I see is that it's very relative to what you're looking at, what progress looks like. So that was just a comment. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. So on your latter point, yeah, I agree. It is very relative to what, to what you're looking at. So others maybe, and it'd be nice to hear what other people's thoughts are on that particular question. Somebody's got their hands up over there. In terms of the mentoring, if it doesn't work out, so at Coventry, for example, we, when I say we, the university, set up a coaching and mentoring academy. And I was engaged in some of that. And then I insisted, is probably the wrong word, but I said, look, I think we need to, because they're having a matching service. So I said, well, I think we need to make part of the process where people can request, if they want, somebody based on other characteristics, whether it's their racial ethnicity or gender, etc. So they did do that, and I was part of that program, as in one of the mentors and coaches. And as part of the matching process, we kind of had, there was like a few months where you had the opportunity, you'd have a few, meetings, and then either one of you, to be honest, could withdraw, very not, constructively. So that's one thing. But in terms of the lack of access, or because I work in a university, there's like, I don't think there's definitely not one Black professor, and in terms of professors of any colour, they're very far and few between. Hence, I'm moving somewhere else. But yeah, but seriously, yeah, it's a struggle and it's a challenge. So even for me, a lot of my mentors or my support structures are outside of my institution, and I would certainly recommend people to go outside of their institution. And I won't go into it now. I started a PhD very late in life. I'm not just saying this, but I am a lot older than what I look. I started a PhD just before the pandemic. I did part-time and was working. I had lots of care and responsibilities. You know, I've got a daughter that's got a disability. Both my parents were elderly and they both died in the pandemic. All sorts of things were happening. It's fine. But the point I'm just saying, I had all of that going on. But the thing that stopped me doing it was I didn't feel, because I'm an activist before I'm an academic, and the challenges I was coming up against, my research was around the absence of Black leaders in higher education. It was much more, you know, my title was much more fancy than that, but that's what it was about. And I found myself conflicted, basically, and so I stopped doing it. So, yeah. So I know I'm just empathizing with what everybody's been saying, but having a mentor, I would say go outside of your institution if you need to.
Thank you very much for an awesome talk. My first comment is that this is one of the first workshops on mentoring where I actually saw a breakdown of what mentoring is and what the expectations and the possible outcomes that the mentor and mentee expect out of that process. It's a word that's thrown around a lot, and people don't really define the objectives of a mentor and mentee. So that really helped me a lot. Thank you very much for that. I come from industry. I'm not an academic. I left academia. I'm one of the cowards. I couldn't stand it. So I went into industry. But in industry, it's got its own challenges as well. I'm in plant breeding. I'm a bioinformatician. So you get there, you see there's no one who looks like you. And then you go into universities to try and recruit people that look like you. Everyone doesn't really, you get there, there's nothing to recruit from. So my question is, when you get to the master's and honors level, you do see a lot of breeders that look like you, but then they disappear when you get to PhD and postdocs. I want to mentor someone, but I feel I don't have the requisite skill set to do that. And you, every time you try and get into that area, there are no tools or tool sets to equip potential mentors in how to handle it. So my question is, would it be something that people are interested in, to have a workshop where you have a proper program to teach potential mentors on how to mentor minorities, something like majority mentoring the minorities, including the allies, those that we see that are not from our background? Would it be something that's useful to have as people in our field?
Thank you, Zach. Well, that was a question. So if other people want to respond to that, because I felt like that was a question to other people. Does anybody want to respond to that? Does anybody else feel that there should be training specifically? Is that a no or a yes or a maybe? Okay. Oh, somebody's got their hand up. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
No, can't hear you.
Hello? Oh. My name is Winnie. Just to answer that question, I think just a few weeks ago, I attended that kind of course. It's run by the University of Bradford. And if you want to mentor the young minority Blacks, there's that course, I think Yorkshire, something to do with ethnic Yorkshire, something. I forget, but I can email you it. Yeah, thank you.
Oh. Oh, sorry, did you both have one?
Hello, thank you so much for your presentation. I absolutely resonated with you from when you said that your dad was an activist. My dad was an activist and he instilled social justice in me. My career has been very journeyed. I'm a lot older than I look as well. But I'm a third year PhD student, and I have the conflict. I'm always in conflict because I'm looking at racism in maternity for maternity staff and the impact that has on patient safety. And I'm constantly in that conflict. And when you outlined that you call yourself a lived experience scholar, I was like, oh, I really need to learn how to label myself. But one of the things that I wanted to just highlight in that kind of pitfalls for sponsor and sponsee relationships is that in my career, I'm a research fellow already, whilst I'm doing my PhD, and I have had white female sponsors in contexts where I've primarily been the only Black person, where other minorities see me, or people that are minoritized see me as being kind of the token person because that white woman has taken me as a sponsor. I recognize that there's a privilege in that. But I think that's probably one of the pitfalls of being a sponsee when someone has chosen you to be their person.
Yeah, I hear. So yeah, I'm just going to respond to that. Unless is yours still related to that? Okay, so let me respond to that then. Right, yeah. No, I hear you. And I think it's something that a lot of us are, we're often conflicted by. Oh my gosh, how not just what we do, the decisions we make, but how we perceived, not just by the white community, but our own communities and things like that. And that
I care about them less, more about my community.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think, I don't know, I've just got to a place, like I said, and some of this might be just because of age, like I said, maybe that I'm just comfortable with what I feel so confident about my rationale for what I'm doing. I am not somebody that I feel is easily hoodwinked. So if somebody is sponsoring me, Black or white, because I also, in terms of allies and sponsors, I don't just see that we can all, I see myself as a sponsor as well. I sponsor some Black people. But what I'm saying is I see it in the context of what it is, and I'm not kidding myself, is that I'm special and I am the one. So I'm just, it's not using them. I'm just doing what I'm doing. I'm just living, and I'm just I'm being true to myself. And I think that's the only thing you can do. And I have had people that have, colleagues, Black colleagues that have come to me over the years saying, oh, Annette, they're just using you. They're just doing this. Don't do it. I'm not doing anything for them. I'm doing what I'm doing for me. Like I said, I feel confident and comfortable with that. And so I just think that's just where I'm at. And like I said, I just don't see it as white people. I want to give an example of, I wish Brightness was here. So one of the best sponsors that happened, or examples of a sponsor I had was, and I've shared this before, there's a Black activist in South Africa. His name's Kumi Naidoo. If you've never heard of him, Google him. He's of Asian origin, but he would identify as a Black activist and from apartheid. And I went to a conference many years ago. I'd never heard of him. And it was a conference, nothing to do with race or equality or anything like that. And I went to this conference, and it was somewhere in Europe, like Italy. And it was like 800 people. And I would have said 790 of them were white. And if not more, no, I mean, it was like that. And it was on the very last day that he was the keynote at the end. I'd never heard of him. And he was actually, at the time, he was the chief exec of International Greenpeace. I nearly never went because, no offense, it was a long 4 days, but it was the best thing, one of the best things I did. So I went at the end, and this guy came on, and he had his African, garments on and whatever, and he came out and he did the most amazing presentation about Greenpeace, about, the environment, but it was very, very, African and Black. And he talked, he brought, Malcolm X, he brought, Marcus Garvey, he brought in but things that I could relate to in terms of the environment. But the point about the sponsor, at that conference, at the end, I was standing and I was talking to the 2 or 3 other Black people that were there at the conference. It was the end. He was in the distance. He was running. He saw me and these other Black people, these Black women talking. And he came running to us, and he embraced us. There were women, and he said, "Oh, hello, my sisters." He asked us where we were from. It turned out we had, I'm trying to cut the story short. It turned out we had a couple of things in, he'd lived in Coventry years ago. We exchanged cards. Over the next couple of years, we contacted each other maybe 2 or 3 times a year, if that, on email. Yeah, stayed in contact. And then one day he was coming to England to see his family. He contacted me, says, "Annette, I'm coming. I can come to your university for 2 or 3 days." He's doing an event. He came to me. This guy's like, he left America, where I don't even know. We'd just done a conference with like 15,000 people. Came, but when he didn't charge us anything, yeah. And he spent 2 days. He came and he spoke at my events and also, I can't explain it. But what he said he even had a meeting with like all my senior leaders, yeah, because they were falling over themselves, yeah. And when when he left, he said, Annette, I did this for you. He said, my sister. He said, I know me coming here, yeah, has raised your profile, and people are going to listen to you in a way that they didn't before, even though they should. So the point being is, and me and him, we're not great friends, but we stay in contact every so often. But the point being is, to me, I saw that as him, I saw that as sponsorship. So it's not always the stereotypical way that we're led to believe, and it's not always white people. And I'm sure, we can sponsor people too. So sorry, that was a bit of a long-winded.
Thank you so much.
I feel like I want to respond to that, but I was going to respond to the to the initial comment. I wanted to respond to that first. It links to my question. Can you hear me?
Yes, now
Yes. Okay. So my initial question was
a
actually.
bit closer.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
A bit much. A bit loud. My initial question was about the informality of sponsorship and mentorship, and you've just touched on it there. Because I think one of the issues with access for me personally in my career, but also with those that I kind of informally support, I guess. I don't know, based on your definitions of mentorship, perhaps we're heading towards that, but it's not quite, but it's kind of ad hoc support. And I think one of the things about it is that there's this kind of myth and stigma around it being so formal and it being, I guess, more than it has to be. And I think that there's maybe a bit of beauty and simplicity and kind of letting it be a bit more organic. And I wondered whether that might help to open up how I might seek a mentor or seek a sponsor, kind of opening up and lessening the stickiness and stuffiness around it. And I wondered if you had any thoughts and advice on how you might go about seeking support in that way that feels more organic and authentic. Yeah.
Okay, no, thanks for that question. It's a brilliant question, because I would say 90% of my mentoring is informal. Yeah, actually nearly 100% of it is actually informal. And they happen. Did you get both of your questions out? Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, I would say informal. So I'm not a lecturer. But I even support and mentor, I would say, some students, some PhD. I mentor, of course, because often it's based on sometimes accidental meetings, and you get and somebody might think, oh, actually, I like listening to you. I like, I feel I can, get something from you, and so I do informal mentoring, and I think that's what's happening in most institutions. Actually, when I talk to, I work with lots of different universities, and when I talk to Black and minority or global majority staff in particular, most of them are saying that they're using a lot of their free time mentoring their students and some of their peers. So I think I think that's but at the same time, just to quantify that though, there is that emotional extra labor and time, and the lack of recognition by the institutions in terms of people are doing that on top of everything else and not being paid or even recognized for it. So it's a hard one. But like I said, I'm an activist, and I'm one of these people that I spend 99% of my my life, my waking time doing this. Not everybody should and could. Okay, you can follow up after. Okay, he's coming with the mic. So I think so. Yeah.
I guess one of the things I wanted to reflect back is something that stood out more of a comment is the mutually beneficial nature of mentorship. And there's something about each person, each party in this process getting something out of it, and it not feeling like, oh, I'm just kind of giving, or I'm just giving and giving and giving, and I'm hoping that it helps you, because actually it's not helping me at all, which feels really unrealistic for a mentoring relationship, because the reality is everyone should be getting something out of it, and there's something to learn from everyone. And I guess it's kind of third thing that I wanted to ask, as you just said, is that the kind of difficulty I'm having with finding a mentor at the moment is that whilst I work in academia and work in mental health, I'm looking for a leadership mentor, because that's the aspects of my role and experience that I think I need mentorship for. So it's actually the fact that I manage a small team, and that is where I need mentoring, which isn't quite as easy and clear cut to find through academic mentoring schemes that want to support you through the academic ranks, which is separate. And, I'd always love support in that way, but very specifically, I'm looking for something that I'm struggling to identify, and there might be some benefit of the informality approach.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, like I said, So certainly conferences and places like this, I mean, I've met some of, amazing people. I've got some really excellent networks and even friends, but even support structures that I've gathered from conferences and places like this. And I certainly would encourage people to, to engage and stay in contact as much as you can. But in terms of the leadership, yeah, that's a hard one. Leadership is the thing that I feel quite strongly about. Again, I won't, I'm not, I'm not trying to like sell myself to you because I'm not, but that is what, yeah, if you look at but that is something I feel very strongly about is, and that's why I sit on a number of boards and things. But anyway, I recognise people online, but yeah.
Hi, some questions from people accessing remotely. Nana says, thank you so much for the insightful presentation on mentoring. And I think touches on what the last person's just said. I wanted to ask if you could perhaps give some examples from your experience of specific things that mentees can do to add value to mentors, especially if the mentor is already quite accomplished or even retired. Any suggestions you might have? Thank you.
A mentee can do to support a mentor.
What I think so, on what a mentor will get out of the relationship.
I suppose it's different things for different people, I suppose. So I wouldn't want to give one answer because I think people do it for different reasons. And sometimes people accidentally fall into mentoring. But I suppose for a mentor, I mean, there's personal development for them. So you could be a professor, you could be like a senior leader. With somebody talked about, what was it? Reverse mentoring. I believe in reciprocal mentoring. So where it is a two-way. So if you're going into it with that, then, there's personal development for anybody. You can learn from anybody, but, the mentees are coming in with their own, their own backgrounds, their own knowledge, their own experiences, their own lived experiences. So I think for a mentor, it could be part of their personal development. That's what I would say. But, you might do it for, altruistic reasons. I don't know. You might want to do it because you want to do something good. You want to, like I said, for me, some of it is about payback. Not all, paying it forward. So there's just a few, but I think it depends on individual reasons. Some people might do it for career, for their CV. I'm not saying that's the right, but that's what they might do.
Hi, I'm Mimi. Just regarding the first question, why does representation matter? Just something that really stands with me today is I was working as a teacher in a secondary school in Yorkshire, and we were talking about occupation with year sevens. And at this school, which is quite deprived, the question I asked them was what occupation you'd like to go into when you're older, or as a career, essentially. And I will never forget that there was a student there who said she had no ambition and didn't understand what the word occupation itself meant, and what a career was. Because everyone around her were not in that position. In fact, I quote, she said, "I'll go on benefits just like my mom." And so that's where representation matters, because I know for myself, people around me, not necessarily from my family, but friends or people I've met at conferences who have achieved quite a lot, or are successful in their own right, provide inspiration and representation, and you can learn from everyone's journey there. So that's why I think it's really important, especially being a PhD student, the first in my family. You don't necessarily know the rules of the game, or even when it comes to applying, application forms vary from university to from faculty as well within university, and having to navigate that system, having that insider knowledge. For me, the very people that helped me in that process were supervisors who were white from another institution. I'm actually at Leeds University, but these were academics I met in my journey who I reach out to and really put the time in to help me navigate that system, and I wouldn't be where I am today without them. So that's where I think representation matters.
Yeah, no, thanks for thanks for that. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I've got, to me it matters. Like I said, I've left it as an open question. Yeah, it matters to me. I think I said already that I grew up in a very white neighborhood, even though my dad was a black activist. I was, grew up in a white neighborhood. I had my teachers had unfortunately, because my dad was so busy being an activist and saving everybody else, we were kind of left to the wolves in some ways. So I'm not joking, he never came to our parents' evening. He had no idea what was happening to us at school. And I left school with some really, really poor qualifications. And when I went to university as a mature student after having 3 children, and when I went and I did one of these, it wasn't an access course, but it was an extended degree. So I did it over 4 years. And I did it actually at Warwick. And when I did my degree, I didn't even know there was Russell groups or whatever. But when anybody ever asked me, there's 2 universities in Coventry and Warwick, and everybody, they say, "Oh, where you graduated from Coventry?" No, from Warwick. No, it doesn't matter. But it's interesting how, going back to what was said at the beginning. But just going back, when I did my undergraduate, and I started the very first year, all my essays started like once upon a time, and that is the truth, because I had no idea. So I was getting all these low grades the first year. I'm not, he's laughing, but it's the truth. It was like, they might as well have just said once upon a time, Janet and John, because I had no idea. So I kept getting all these low grades. But within a year or so, I picked it up. Sorry, because I've not, you know what, I've noticed I've been looking this way. I apologize the whole time. But what I was going to say, but within a year, or 2, I started to realize there's a formula. And this goes back to what people were saying. There's a formula. Do what we say, write what we say, read what we say, and you'll get the grades. So I'm not yet, but it took, because I was 31 when I finished my first degree. And I've had again, people might want to comment about this. I did my master's when I was 50, and I started my PhD when I was like in my, nearly mid-50s. And I've stopped it now. But the point being is, part of the reason I stopped was because I felt like I was still having to write what everybody was telling me to write and do. Yeah, so I kind of rejected that. But the point, going back to, once you learn and having the representation, it does make a difference.
Okay. Hello?
Yes.
This is Tony. I'm Tony Siler Holloman. Like you, I started my academic journey. I started before I had kids, but after I was married, had some kids. My parents were, my father had died, my mother was older. I decided to go back. And because it was always a dream of mine, I wanted my doctorate. But I found that when I got back into university, I wasn't so, even though I was older, a mature student, I found, I didn't feel uncomfortable on the campuses, given my age. I got along with everyone, but I found that it was really hard for me to get mentors. They seemed to think that because I was older and had been through so much in life, had worked in so many sectors, public, private, voluntary sector, that I knew everything. I could find the resources on my own. They just weren't interested. And so even now, I know I'm older, but I still feel like I've got 10, 15 good years left in me to contribute to the world. And it's still hard for me to find a mentor. What would you suggest for someone like me or a student who's older?
Are you still in America? Do you live in America now?
Do I live in America? No, I'm here in the UK.
Oh, okay. The only reason I was going to say that because that is an American accent that I can hear.
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. So just to quantify that, in case you're thinking, why am I asking? Because I'm on the board of an organization called NADIHE, the National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education, which is based in America. So I was going to connect you with somebody there, but that's why I was asking. So sorry I was going to put, because there would have been lots of mentors there.
That would have been perfect.
Yeah, I know. So that's why, so now I've got to answer the question. So I think for an older person, again, in some ways you might find it easier, because I suppose in terms of the academics, I think a lot of the academics from Black and global majority backgrounds, there's probably a lot more in the older or maturer generation. Yes, we've got new ones coming up that would have quite a lot of established experience. But I suppose it's what university are you at?
Actually, I finished at 2020 here, University
Oh, so
of
you,
Leeds,
but you just
but
want.
I have my own organization now. I
Oh,
do educational consulting, but I really would like some guidance. Not as much in the business area as with academia, like how to develop programs and things like that.
okay. Well, you know what? Networks is what I think is accessing certain networks. By all means, contact me afterwards, and I might be able to put you in contact with certain networks, right? You know, as well as one or two individuals. So yeah, that's probably the best thing I could say, because yeah, I think it's about networks and having access to networks.
Thank you so much. And this was a great presentation. I just want you to know.
Thank you very much. I think you're all being very kind, but yeah. Yeah, we've got to finish at 4. We've got to finish at 4:40. That's what time is it? Oh my gosh, is it that? 4 minutes. Oh,
My name is Precious, and so I'm doing. I'm a first year PhD student from the University of Leicester, and I'm researching the career progression of minority ethnic nurses in the NHS. Okay, so I've just reached a juncture in my research where I'm looking at mentoring and sponsorship, and I'm asking myself, and some persons have mentioned it already, that first of all, we need mentors that are higher up in the organization, and we don't have too many people that look like us that are higher up. So most of them are white. So does that mean that, or does that really make it important for us to seek out mentors from the other ethnic group? And if it's important, how do we go about that? What strategies? And there's also the problem of some persons mentioned that informal mentoring being more important, but there could be some problems with access. So how do we navigate that? I don't know if you understand my question.
well, I think you're just saying, you know, because there aren't enough mentors from Black and global majority backgrounds, especially in senior positions, if that's what I'm hearing what you're saying. So how do you, and so you might have to then, not that it's a bad thing, but you're saying that you may have to have mentors then that come from white backgrounds. Is that well, because that's the only other background after Black and global majority.
So certainly you will have to have mentors white,
Yes.
but should we look at it as like a central focus, since Blacks are not so many in that level? So should it be part of our career development strategy? So to say, I don't know.
I think
I'm just.
Yeah, it's not prescriptive. Look, I don't think that every Black person should have a Black mentor and every white, you know, it's not that simple. You know, my presentation today, and not just the presentation because it's what I believe as well. So I'm not just saying it just for the sake of I've been invited here, is around, you know, it was like, you know, it's called BME, but global and, you know, Black global majority early career researchers. However, yes, you know, that doesn't mean you still can't find support and mentors from people in different positions and different ethnic backgrounds. I think it's the relationship you have with them, and it's being honest and managing your expectations. Because when it comes to racism, you know, their understanding or empathy or ability to empathize may not be the same. It might be better than some individuals. I'm making very broad generalizations. We've talked already about, you know, we don't always find allies within our own communities. And our own, you know, our own colleagues. But yeah, so I think it's about managing your expectations and their expectations, and yeah, and that of the relationship, and why are they your mentor? You know, if you want to have, you know, if you want some support as somebody who can empathize with you based on your ethnicity and your racial background, then that might not be the best person.